Hello, my name is Gian Loretta, and this presentation is for the WVU Summer 2021 Undergraduate Research Symposium. Over the past 2 months, I have been working with my mentor, Dr. Herschel Thomas, and his co-principal investigator, Dr. Daniel Sledge, on a National Science Foundation-funded project that seeks to better understand Texas's response to Winter Storm Uri, which struck just a few months ago in February amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. With climate instability and the frequency of natural disasters on the rise, there is an ever increasing need to study the responses to simultaneous crises. Both governments and non governmental entities, or NGEs for short, such as nonprofits, religious groups, and businesses in Texas, were already strained by financial challenges and public health requirements brought about by COVID-19. Then, they were ravaged by Uri's frigid weather and the ensuing widespread loss of essential utilities. Unequipped to handle the intense cold, pipes burst, causing extensive damages to homes and other facilities. People were crowding into warming centers and were standing in line to receive food. The roadways were very unsafe, and in the upper rightmost picture, you can see hundreds of rescued cold shock tortoises. As these pictures demonstrate, there is no aspect of life that is not touched when disaster strikes. Unfortunately, Winter Storm Uri and the COVID-19 pandemic are not the last crises that our nation will face, and as such, it is of exceptional importance to understand what actually happens during disaster responses, especially when the crises are compounding, so these insights can improve future responses and save countless lives. Hence, this project builds upon previous research conducted by Dr. Sledge and Thomas that study the responses to hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria, which struck in 2017. It was also funded by the National Science Foundation. Both that project and our current endeavor are theoretically motivated by Elizabeth Clemens's description of the American disaster response as a Rube Goldberg state. Like the quirky machines pictured here, the American disaster state is complex, chaotic, and contains a lot of moving parts. So instead of directly providing services during times of disaster, the government delegates authority and responsibility to NGEs. So much so that those nonprofits, businesses, and religious groups are formally included in the Federal Emergency Management Agency's National Response Framework. With that fundamental information, this project has three main objectives. First, we want to understand what happened specifically during the response to Uri. Then, we want to use what we find to develop a deeper understanding of the interconnected roles of governments and NGEs. And hopefully, achieving those two goals will then help us reach our loftiest objective, which is to understand and improve disaster response in America. So at this point in time, we really are focusing on that first objective, which is to understand what happened during Uri. Thus, we hypothesize that the fiscal challenges and the public health requirements associated with COVID-19 impeded the ability of NGEs to respond to Winter Storm Uri. So for this project, we are utilizing two different methodologies. First, we are implementing 3 waves of statewide surveys of 1, officials from regional and local health agencies, 2, emergency management departments, and 3, a sample of nonprofits operating in Texas. We are utilizing the Qualtrics platform to do so. Recruitment for both the emergency management departments and the nonprofits have been completed, and the surveys will remain open for another few weeks. And recruitment for the health agencies survey is still a work in progress. Additionally, semi-structured interviews with both governments and NGEs are also being conducted. In early June, we interviewed nonprofits and governmental agencies in Dallas, and 2 weeks ago, we completed 11 in-person and 3 virtual interviews with nonprofit organizations and a few government representatives in Houston. Thankfully, I was able to participate in the virtual interviews as they were on Zoom, and it was truly fascinating and inspiring to hear people's stories of resiliency, dedication, and compassion. Next, we plan to conduct interviews in Austin and target more representatives from the city, county, and state governments in early August. Then, we will be able to analyze and notate all of the transcripts from the interviews and compare those findings to the survey data. And as to be expected, there is still much work to be done, But we do have a preliminary answer to our hypothesis based on a summary of all of our survey responses from those nonprofits and the emergency management departments so far. So in the surveys, we asked participants to describe the extent of the impact that COVID-19 had on their organization's general functionality and response to URI with the questions listed here. We measured their answers using a sliding semantic differential scale as shown below. We also included a checkbox for participants who were unsure or felt the question was not applicable to them. So when we looked at the average answers from nonprofits and emergency management departments, we found that the COVID-19 pandemic did not impact their responses to URI as much as we thought. So expectedly, when asked about their general ability to operate, both groups reported rather high impediments from both physical challenges and public health requirements. Note that the sliding scale from the survey question has been translated to the y-axis. And with responses in the 5 to 6 range, we expected these trends to continue during their responses to URI. However, they didn't. As you can see, the average impact per category fell by a couple of points for each group, with responses in the 2 to upper 3 range. Why is that? Well, these preliminary findings suggest that while COVID-19 restricted NGE's outreach and funding activities, it may have increased their adaptive capacities to serve clients. Before URI struck, NGE spent a whole year working around barriers and lack of resources caused by COVID-19. Therefore, they were already used to making adjustments and creating solutions to problems. Furthermore, we included a survey question with a blank text field that asked the nonprofits if they would have responded differently to URI had the pandemic not been ongoing, and if so, how. We found a lot of variety within those answers. Many groups answered with a simple no, but others wrote about dwindling volunteers due to hesitancy or just not being able to help as many people as they normally would have. But what really stuck out to us were the groups that wrote things such as, and I'm quoting them directly, the pandemic helped our organization be responsive versus reactive. And we had some processes in place for COVID response, which were not affected by the winter storm. Hence, this implies that the impacts of Winter Storm Uri were mitigated by groups that were already prepared to adjust to crises. And this only further emphasizes the sheer essentiality of NGEs in effective and efficient disaster response. And I truly hope that this research can be used to advocate for their importance and support so they can continue their critical life-saving work in both times of normalcy and disaster. As for the future of this project, I am exceptionally grateful to say that I will continue my work on it as a research assistant immediately after the conclusion of SHORE. I'm looking forward to continuing the data collection and analysis processes, as well as the interviews that we will be conducting in Austin soon. In addition, we will be publishing our findings once they are finalized in hopes of supplementing future studies on responses to disaster, especially those involving simultaneous crises, domestic preparedness, and the consequences of operating in that Rube Goldberg state. I would also like to mention briefly the contributions that I have made to a few of Dr. Thomas's other ongoing projects. First, I assisted with survey recruitment for a study of US mayors' perceptions on the World Health Organization and how it impacted their local decision-making during the pandemic. Also, I have built a Qualtrics survey and collected demographic and contact information for potential participants in a project that will determine how adolescents in school-based settings are screened and referred for treatment with opioid use disorder. Through participating in SURE, I have had the opportunity to see public policy at play in a vast array of contexts, and I am certain that having this multidisciplinary experience will only improve my future research endeavors. With that being said, I would like to express my gratitude to all who made the SURE program possible, especially Dr. Michelle Richards-Babb and Dr. Rita Rio. I would also like to thank Dr. Thomas for his outstanding mentorship and guidance, and I am grateful for the support of the WVU Political Science Department, the Eberly College of Arts and Sciences, and the National Science Foundation. Listed here are my references. And thank you so much for your time and attention. and please feel free to ask any questions that you may have. Thank you.